How many do we need?
We need 4, but we should have it full. I believe all 4 members.
Eric Martin. Well, now we have.
Sir? We have a call. You said, oh, there's not. Okay, now we do.
Oh, Scott's in good. Morning, Scotty.
Hey, Ryan, would you grab the signage? Would you grab the signage?
Please stop. Get mad. Drop his vehicle off. Yeah. So, just upstairs, drop his stuff off right down. Okay. Nobody's calling in.
Yeah, you can ask him.
I'm not sure who.
Go ahead. They can call us.
Okay, there's.
We're good.
Yeah, we have, the one person not here is Judge Watson. I think she might have said she wasn't here, so we have.
Good morning, everyone. This time I'd like to convene the prison board and seek approval of the previous minutes.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. We're going to a public comment on agenda items only. Okay, hearing none, we'll seek approval of the bills. Could I have a motion to approve the bills?
A second.
Okay. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, approval of personnel actions.
Thank you, Commissioner. We would seek 4 personnel actions, 3 at the pre-release center. Those are Cindy Steinbach, Kaylee LaRoe, and Sarah Verastro as full-time resident supervisors, and at the prison, Daniel Gabbard as a part-time correctional officer.
Very good. Any questions or comments? Could I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Informational highlights. Warden.
Population report for April of 2023 indicates that the prison had an average of 157.33 males, and at the pre-release center, 32.57 males, for an average daily population of 189.9 and a peak in the month of 197. For females, we carried an average of 26.2 at the prison, 9.87 at the pre-release center, for an average daily population of 36.07 and a peak of 40. The in-house average daily population was 225.97, and we reached a peak population in the month of 234. There were 22.17 male clients on in-home detention and 8.3 females on in-home detention. We had no overcrowding transfers, so our total population in-house for the month was the same. It's 225.97. The prison disciplinary report. In the month of April, there were 24 hearings conducted. Of those hearings, 23 were found guilty with lockup time imposed. 1 was found guilty with lockup time suspended. There were no not guilty rulings in that month. Of those 24 hearings conducted, they were conducted on 19 inmates, 3 of which had greater than 1 incident, and there were 17 informational reports generated in the month by staff. Ryan, is there anything else that you wish to add?
No, I have nothing to add.
The pre-release center report is next, and in April, we had an average of 5 males on work release and 1 female on work release, 28 males on work crew and 9 females on work crew. An average for the month of 33 and 10. Our year-to-date averages are 35 males and 9 females. Program highlights: PRC Manager Thompson and Resident Supervisor 2 Jeff Hamilton, Vito Malik, Doug Ellsworth, Jesse Wagner, and Employment Officer Connor Morse attended an evidence collection training. That training was led by Detective Arnold Duck from the District Attorney's Office, and that training occurred on April 6th. And then all staff participated in self-defense training. That training was held on April 11th and was led by Training Sergeant Joe DeFrancisco, was also led by Deputy Sheriff Brian Bingaman. And we thank the Sheriff's Office for allowing Officer Bingaman to participate and train our staff in self-defense. Bail release program highlights is the next report, and in the month of April, there were 130.5, an average of 130.5 clients on supervised bail, 35 of which were on supervised bail, 93.63 were on intensive supervised bail, and 1.87 was on supervised release, serving sentences for driving under suspension. Those clients saved an average of 3,915 bed days at the prison.
So Warden, could you explain what bail release program is to some of the people in the audience here? And is it pre-sentence or pre-trial?
These numbers indicate pre-trial clients. The bail release program serves both pre-sentence inmates that are made eligible for bail and are approved for the program. The courts would have to indicate that a person's eligible for supervised release or on supervised bail. And there's also a sentence component where the courts can impose a driving under suspension sentence and domestic relations. We also would supervise if domestic relations allowed a person to serve their sentence on house arrest. That's why that category is indicated on there also. The bail release program is under the prison system, and so anybody that comes to jail that is arrested and made eligible for bail, if the courts also make them eligible for supervised bail, they're interviewed, determined if they're appropriate and meet the criteria, and then they could be released onto onto bail, but on a greater level of supervision included with that, versus somebody who just comes in and posts cash bail, cash or property bail.
Okay, thank you.
Warden, did it seem as though the number of the work crew is up? It seems like...
The numbers at the pre-release center?
the pre-release center.
We're seeing a slight increase, and we hope to see that continue. We've been in talks with the district attorney's office and with the court system and made them aware of how the programming is starting to return now as we've started to unwind from COVID restrictions.
Right.
And we're doing that in piecemeal. And we're basically right now we're back to our operations prior to COVID.
Right.
So we'll continue, or we anticipate to see those numbers increase. We've seen our work release numbers increase also. The next report is the mental health snapshot. The snapshot was taken on May 9th of this year, and on that day there were 252 total inmates within the prison system, 206 males and 46 females. Of those 252, 82 were indicated to be under roster A and observing no mental health history. That's 32.54% of the population. There were 63 inmates under roster B that had past mental health history but had no active symptoms within the last year, and that was 25% of the population. 93 of the inmates were under roster C observing current mental health issues, and that's 36.9% of the population, and 14 inmates were under roster D observing some form of serious mental illness. That was 5.56% of the population. Of the psychotropic medications that were dispensed at the pre-release center, Of the 32 males that were counted on this day, 6 were receiving medication, and that was 18.75% of the population. The females, there were 10 females that day, 7 of them were receiving medication, and that was 70% of that population. And at the prison, there were 148 male inmates, 37 were receiving meds, and that's 25% of the population. There were 27 females and 16 were receiving meds, or 59.2% population. The total percent of inmates on medication at the pre-release center was 30.95. The total at the prison was 30.29, and within the entire prison system then was 30.41. Also included at the end of your packet, and I provide this. Actually, I don't provide, I submit it to the board. It's provided by Manager Rogers of the bail release program, but there is the yearly or the annual report, the bail release program report, and it goes through all of the statistics, and I include that for the board's review, and if there, obviously, if after the board has had a chance to review, if there are questions, we can address those perhaps at next month's meeting. Additional program highlights: on March 29th and 30th, Detective Arnold Duck provided the training on evidence collection to the supervisory staff at the prison. That's the same training that was provided at the pre-release center. He came in and provided that to the lieutenants and sergeants at the prison. On April 2nd through the 5th, Deputy Warden Barnes, Deputy Warden Ebner, and I attended the Pennsylvania County Corrections Association Spring Conference that was held in Butler County. On April 6th, prison staff attended firearms training that was conducted by Chief Firearms Instructor Lieutenant Tim Stutzman. On April 12th, Correctional Officer Scott Gare and Correctional Officer John Wagner completed basic training at the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections Training Academy in Elizabethtown. On April 20th, Deputy Warden Ebner and I attended a CJAB Mental Health Subcommittee meeting at the Sharwell Building. Also on April 20th, the prison staff attended self-defense training conducted by Deputy Brian Bingaman from the Lycoming County Sheriff's Office. On April 20th, Deputy Warden Ebner attended a statewide forensics advisory meeting, and that was hosted by Sam Smeltzer from Torrance State Hospital. On April 24th through the 28th, Lieutenant Josh Rogers attended handgun and shotgun instructor course training at the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections Training Academy in Elizabethtown. And on April 25th, Deputy Warden Ebner attended a presentation provided by representatives from the State Torrance Hospital. Those are all the informational highlights I have for the month.
Very good. You have any questions? Okay, we'll move on to old business, reentry. Who's going to be doing it, Rick?
Nick will be presenting, yeah.
Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Henning. I'm the reentry coordinator for GEO Reentry Services. The first is the in-prison reentry services report. As of 4/30/23, there was 37 active participants with 3 pending intakes. Since January 2023, there was 46 intakes completed, 17 LSIR assessments completed, 46 transitional action plans completed, and 103 additional one-on-one sessions. The total participants in in-prison programming that were released from the incarceration was 42. 17 additional referrals or appointments have been made, and 96 additional resources. Total referrals made to in-prison programming was 63. 45 of those came from the prison, and 18 of those came from the pre-release center, and there was 11 total referrals for the month of April. The sentencing broken down by in-prison programming referrals, there was 12 probation violations, 7 max-out cases, 23 new cases, 14 domestics, 7 contempt, and 0 pre-trial. For reentry services, April statistics, the average population per day was 71. There was 11 total intakes with 12 total discharges, 7 of those being successful. And total EM participants was 49, 32 of those being adult and 17 being juvenile. Then a report from APO, Program Population Statistics. There were 7 sentenced, 63 total on APO, and 1 pretrial. Total program population as of May 3rd was 71, 51 being male clients and 20 being female clients. For GPS alcohol monitoring services, there are 32 active clients. 9 are on a TAD unit, 7 are on GPS monitors, 14 on home guards, and 2 are on the SL3 breathalyzers. For juvenile, there are currently 17 active cases on the GPS services through GEO. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, guys.
Looks like a lot of activity though. All right. And I noticed the Judge Butts came in, and we've seen, if you look at your daily population, average daily population per month in the back of that, you see from 2022 all the way down to 2015. You know, we saw in 2015 we had an average population of 404.52. So the GEO, we went to the judge and the DA to solve some of our overcrowding issues, and GEO reentry was one of the solutions. And I didn't know if the judge would want to tell anybody in the audience today about GEO and the success that we've had, why we implemented it.
What would you like to know?
Yeah,
Do I need to come up there?
sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Masser. Back in 2011, as part of Criminal Justice Advisory Board, we had discussed with Commissioner Masser, who was part of the Commissioners Board of Commissioners back then, with trying to come up with some solutions for overcrowding for the county prison, because we had been running with so many overcrowding, so many placements in Clinton County per day that it was just becoming financially unworkable. So a group of us got together, including the then district attorney, now Judge Linhart, and came up with a solution that we would incorporate reentry. We would incorporate what some counties call day reporting and we call reentry services, to see if we can defer people going to jail or coming out of jail sooner. So the district attorney then came up with some suggestions on how to implement this, which was we would, if, for example, if somebody had a sentence of 9 months, they'd be eligible for reentry after half. And then that way it would reduce the population, it would get them into programming and services, and hopefully give them the resources, education, and training so that maybe they wouldn't recidivate or come back into the system. And since that time, we've been able to develop this really strong partnership with GEO to not only have that 6-month program, because we've had, 600, I think was the number that Jared spoke to us about yesterday, successful completions of the program since September of 2014, when we were able to bring this program together to start working with the county. But we've also have now people who unfortunately have graduated, who have come back through the system. They can come back through reentry in a smaller, more condensed version to really target the areas that they're still struggling with. We also incorporate the use of an electronic monitoring program with them. During COVID, it was very helpful because it enabled us to keep people out of the county prison. We're using that the way we used pre-COVID, which is just for those who participate in treatment courts, so that you have your DUI offenders who have anywhere from a 90-day to a 1-year mandatory sentence can serve it on electronic monitoring because they're in intensive programming through us. Because of the overall statewide shortage of detention beds, you heard the number 17 this morning, that GEO has been assisting with juvenile probation and being able to manage those individuals coming through the juvenile system that would ordinarily be placed in some type of shelter care to detention, secure facility, but we don't have those beds statewide, so we're trying to implement the electronic monitoring program to manage that population of people. And I don't know that you know this yet, maybe you do, but I know that juvenile probation is going to start a conversation with GEO about using some of the programming that they have to supplement the work that they do on a juvenile basis with evidence-based practices. So they're extending all of that education and training into the juvenile population. The hope is that the commissioners will approve this, that they can, the excess space that we have in the adult contract, that we would be given permission to modify the contract to allow juveniles to be used there too. Keeping juveniles and adults separate, obviously. And then there was one other thing I was thinking of that I wanted to mention about our use with GEO. But just I know what it is. And the other thing that in the adult system, where there's a really strong push towards evidence-based practices. Juvenile has been doing that for many, many years, and only now the adult system is really putting a huge push through the adult probation offices of the Commonwealth. And so we're very fortunate with GEO that we have this partner that is well trained in risk assessment tools, that as we have new hires and new people coming into the adult probation office, GEO can support us with the training of those and help with the fidelity, how accurately they're still continuing to administer those risk needs assessments. So they've been a great supportive partner with evidence-based programming as well. So I don't know what we would do without GEO, to be honest with you, because they have just also brought great ideas to the table to help us implement ways in how we can better address the needs of the population of people on supervision, obviously to reduce the issues that they have, but also to reduce the need to recidivate, whether it be through education, employment. I think that, there are only 2 people currently in reentry that are not, there was some really incredibly low number that we heard that are.
There's 3 out of 63 right now.
3 out of 63 people that are currently in reentry that are unemployed. Everybody else has a job. So these are just great numbers. We're seeing awesome success with GEO. And I know initially the commissioners were a little bit skeptical, and even upon the renewal of the contract, as to what benefit GEO offers the county. But it's a really a continuum of opportunities for us with GEO. And especially at a time where we needed to address the effects of COVID in the county prison, we were able to, they just said, what do you need? We're here, just let us know what you want to do. And in cooperation with this district attorney, to be able to come back to where we were and to continue to use them has been a really great benefit, I believe, to the county. And then they're very supportive as an employer. We've gotten some people that have been through the system and successfully completed probation that are currently employed by GEO. So they put their money where their mouth is also. They work very hard at rehabilitation, and they want to have individuals who are currently working in their program who have walked the walk, so that they can offer hope and support to those that are currently in the system.
Judge, you bring up a good point about the juveniles, and we all know there's a shortage of juvenile facilities to house juveniles. And what we're seeing going on nationwide is the facilities we're utilizing now, states as far away as California are flying their juveniles to the East Coast for placement, places like Ohio where we utilize, and with fewer beds and more juveniles, it makes it limited. So GEO has assisted that a great deal. Another aspect of GEO was they have a coordinator, a GEO coordinator that the courts had used that I'd worked directly with. Initially, we saw a reduction in parole violations. That person would work within the prison system itself and work with the inmates and give a smooth handoff to the agent when they were paroled from the county prison. When that individual took another job with a local education facility, that position sat empty for 2 years. And I was a deputy over at the time. We saw an increase in our violations. That's something that this board of commissioners was able to do. We revisited that and hired the coordinator back.
And that's Nick's job
And
right
that's
now.
Nick. And Nick, you do a tremendous job, and the people that came before you. And that helped directly reduce those violations. I saw it firsthand. I was a big believer that we needed to get that coordinator back in place, and we did. And we want to thank you. It's a fantastic program. There's been fantastic people that work there. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Mike Boughton, who was a
Yeah.
huge part of GEO. He's missed dearly by everybody, and he was a big part of the program. Example, there was a county out in western PA where there was a president judge came in, and she took GEO away, and they had an overcrowding problem like we did. She took it away, and that overcrowding problem came back, and it was a direct reflection on that decision. So.
But the interesting thing is, because I know exactly about that circumstance, because that's the county that we went to when Warden DeParlos was still here to observe their operations. We set up an entirely different oversight process. We have that board that we meet once a month, so everybody is available. The commissioners, representatives of the prison, representatives from APO, and we've got West Branch and the Public Defender's Office. So we have, it's a group oversight
It's a
process.
team effort.
Correct.
Yep.
Where Franklin County didn't have that opportunity, because I've spoken to the current president judge trying to see if they'd be interested in restarting it and just offering to them the changes that we made in it, and it never occurred to them that that they could do that. And I said, we've done it since the very beginning, because we knew it was a county operation contracted with the commissioners, but it works directly with the courts. So that's why I had suggested the position that the commissioners created is kind of the bridge position between adult probation and GEO, so that we can keep current on what's happening. And then if GEO has a problem, they've got someone immediately they can reach out to for assistance or support. And it's worked really well. It's been a combination of John Stahl for all of the years and Jared Corman. Between the two of them, they've done an awesome job through the adult probation office. And I think that's why our program has usually been one of the #1 programs in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So for that, of course, I'm definitely proud of that, because when they have their meetings, they bring everybody here and to show them what we've been able to accomplish, and that's really gratifying.
So the having the juveniles go in is a very interesting idea, because, well, first of all, the contract allows us to have 100 people, and if we're only
125.
100, right, and if we have 70, so we have the space, and obviously
Correct.
they'll be separated. But the other interesting thing about it is, if you read the GEO syllabus, it's the kind of information you want to get to someone who's 13, right? And it's about, being responsible and about thinking about what you do before you do it. The other part of it that's interesting, I just learned about it now when you told us, but the other thing is that the information will be coming from a person who's not the defined JPO officer, right? So the youth looks at the JPO officer as someone would look at someone in police,
Authority.
right? Authority. This is going to come from a third party, which is good. So they'll be hearing it. So that's an interesting. Whose idea was that?
I believe it was the Chief Juvenile Probation Officer,
Dave
Matt
Goodwin?
Yonkin.
Oh, it was Matt Yonkin.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dave's now the adult
Dave's now,
chief.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good idea. It's a very good idea, and that.
And just so you know, this hasn't been discussed for a while. I met with Matt Yonkin just before the reentry meeting yesterday. So it was only just before noon that he had come to me, because he had been talking with the current manager of the program of GEO, Nicole English, and John Hogan, and said, well, you got to run it by Judge Butts. And I was like, well, I mean, you don't have to run it by me, but talk to me about it and let's see if we can make this work. So after our conversation, we came up with a strategy, and I said, let me talk to John Hogan at reentry, and I did, and I came back to Matt later the afternoon yesterday and said, go forward with it. See what we have to do with the commissioners to arrange the modification of the contract to enable juvenile to be able to use the facility as well.
Yeah.
Because right now the contract's only written for adult.
Yeah, from the perspective, the big picture of trying to cut recidivism, the earlier we engage, the better,
Absolutely.
right? So that's really encouraging. A good idea, Matt Young.
And there are a lot of resources in the juvenile system available in our community, but it never hurts to add another one.
Right.
And that's what this would be.
You know, when you look back, and we had a serious problem, right, with the overcrowding, and it was a $40 million prison
Yep.
proposed, and you know, that would have been 50, 60. And we put our heads together, right? And you know, there were some big personalities out there that you know, struggled, but you put the system together, you tweaked it, you made it unique, and it has worked. But what I like to do, and I'm sure my colleagues have received the same phone calls, is look at from the other end. And what I mean by that is we have people that call us, say, listen, I made a mistake when I was 18 years old. I'm 47 years old and I can't get this job because it's on my record. Right? Look at my record. How do we help these people? How do we change this? Because that's wrong.
Well,
That is wrong. Another issue is may
I address that one?
Sure.
On June 15th, from 9 to 11, on the campus of Penn College, we're going to have a second chance hiring summit. It came about as Commissioner Mirabito and I were part of the subcommittee it was part of the regular reentry committee coalition meeting, and the employment group had been talking, and we had said, why don't we just offer a seminar? So what we're going to do on that morning is offer a group of people who have been through the system and can speak to their experiences. The next panel will be, what are the benefits of hiring justice-involved people? And then the third would be employers who have used justice-involved people and tell their stories about how successful they have been. Because I think there's, like in many things, there's a stigma about hiring justice-involved people that we want to overcome. So this is our way of coming together, and we met a couple different times to come up with a strategy on how can we address the employers in the community to encourage them to take a chance. Some people are still on supervision, some people have that prior record that they have to overcome. And then there's also the other part, which is clean slate, which the governor just, I believe, recently signed the next wave of clean slate, which is to be able to make unavailable to employers or landlords old convictions, and also closing off all of the charges that were dismissed that may still appear on a record in the system that shouldn't be, so that they're all, for lack of a better word, covered up. So you can't see those dismissals. And if you've gone a period of time without further violations, those early offenses will also be shielded from public release as well. So that addressed the first question.
Under clean slate, are the employers not allowed to ask if you've been arrested?
That's not what Clean Slate does.
Oh,
Clean
okay.
Slate just does it from the
Internal.
information records side of things.
When you go to search,
Correct.
the state is blocking it. Got it,
Right.
okay.
This is a joint effort between the state police and the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts, which is my operational boss,
Right.
for lack of a better word, because they control CPCMS, the Common Pleas Case Management System, so that the state police makes a referral of all these cases that no longer need to be open to the public, and then AOPC implements them.
So if I was a person that was involved in what do you call justice what?
Justice involved.
Involved. Okay. And I wanted to find out how I could be that person in Clean Slate. What do I do?
You don't have to do anything. It happens automatically. Twice a month, Tom Heap gets a list of cases that need to be clean slated, for lack of a better description. And in the beginning, I used to just manually sign everything. Now I automatically have it signed so that there's no delay in implementing those. The only time that an individual may need to come to court is if they're filing for expungement. For whatever reason, they have a charge that should be expunged or wiped clean off of their record. And many instances, it's charges that are dismissed and they're off of our information, but maybe they still come up on an FBI rap sheet. And so the expungement then requires that the FBI has to remove that. So that's the only time we would need to come into court. Clean slate happens automatically.
Okay, good, good.
And I think that was the sole purpose of that program, was so the burden wouldn't be on the individuals to have to make it happen, that it was part of a way of supporting their ability to reenter society and to be able to be employed and to get housing, is to be able to have this happen automatically. So you had another, did you have another question?
No, it was,
Okay.
actually, it was, you know, because we all employ people, and, you know, we have younger people, like 16, 17, 18, right? They come and apply for a job, and they may have gotten caught drinking, DUI, or just getting caught drinking. And we can't put them on our insurance for 5 years, right? That's a long time.
It is.
Between the 18 and 23, you know, you've changed for the most part, right? And that's a long time for an individual not to be able to be, they're just not productive. We can't use them if
Because
they can't
you
drive.
can't insure them.
Is that a
Right.
statute set down by the insurance companies or by law?
Well, the
Uh,
law,
it's
the
the
legislature can change
legislature.
it.
Okay, so
They set the
legislature and
insurance
insurance
rates,
companies
yeah.
And I'm not
Correct.
saying that,
That's where that change would have to come
Yeah,
from, is the
no, that's the
legislature.
legislators.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because the insurance companies are just honoring what the law says.
right.
I don't know what would trigger the fact, okay, you're safe, you know, I don't know that. But I'm just saying, 5 years is a long time.
I agree.
To show up and,
But that's why many of those types of offenses, whether they go through juvenile court or say they go through an MDJ, that we have the opportunities to divert them. Wouldn't have to first entry into the system have a record as a result of it. We really try to divert. And divert could mean never come to, you know, a plea or a sentence. If you accomplish X number of goals, then your charges are dismissed. That would be a true diversion.
Okay.
We've got that with a kind of like a rough program with drug offenders, with individuals with substance use disorder. If the police see a specific person, they refer them to West Branch. West Branch gets them into treatment. If they successfully complete the treatment, then the police, in cooperation with the DA's office, may not file the charges. So we're trying to, in the front end, not have people have those permanent records, or records even for a period of time that are going to cause a disability that's going to make them unemployable or just hard to employ. But that's the legislature that does that.
and you look at the cycle, and we're seeing a lot more mental illness, okay, which ends up in the justice system. So it's a very complex system. It's very difficult, and unless you have the people that are willing to get involved, meet, and make those certain adjustments, you know, our prison population would be exploding, and you know.
And you will be receiving a memo from the subcommittee that came together, who we talked from a cross-section of all different areas. Chris Ebner was part of it, of the recommendations that we'd like to make to the commissioners as to how we can improve the mental health services, forensic mental health services here in the community. But then again, our county, just like many of the other counties of our size or even smaller, are really struggling with getting people to take those positions. So even if you would throw all of the money in the world to something, if you can't get the people to take those jobs.
We just met with the CEO of UPMC, and they struggle too.
Correct.
With hiring those professionals. You're trying to find a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
trying to find caseworkers. So it's
Mhm.
across the board.
And telehealth has been really helpful to overcome that hurdle, but even to have a full-time master's level mental health person at the county prison, The last one went to Penn College, and we haven't been able to fill that position since then, and I think the prison suffers for it. But then again, it's not that the commissioners don't support it, it's not that we don't recognize the need for it, it's just they can't find anybody to fill the job.
I don't know.
But more so, I think now than over the last 37 years of my work here in this county, we don't have silos, or we're working really hard to communicate among everybody between the prison and the mental health and the courts and the DA's office and defense bar. That last meeting that you read about on the agenda, that was a criminal brown bag presentation. So we had attorneys as part of that conversation hear from the people from Torrance State Hospital, so that more attorneys become familiar with the mental health process, because we see more and more people coming in through the system with mental health. And the fact that maybe they go to Torrance and they are restored to competency and they come back. They can't sit in the county prison for a long period of time because we don't want them to slide back. We want to move on them right away. And if I understand correctly, we've even had the first person be restored in the county prison. They didn't even have to go to Torrance because of the great certified, I guess it is the nurse practitioner that does telehealth with the county prison, that she's been very helpful in addressing the mental health needs in the county prison.
Who was the woman, the situation that occurred just maybe a month ago where she had 2 masters and a doctorate, and she wasn't allowed to do it because she didn't have a certificate? You gotta be kidding me.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, some of the rules need to change as well.
Well,
you
that
know?
could also be insurance too, but
They would love to
I don't know
hire her,
about
but they
that.
can't because she doesn't have one certification.
One certificate.
yeah,
Judge, just to clarify.
sure.
Clean slate does not remove the charges from somebody's records. It just makes it unavailable for a criminal records search.
Correct.
Yeah, only expungement.
Right, only expungement can ever do that.
Right.
And
For a party.
expungement doesn't always apply. I mean, there are some rules under the rules of the criminal law where you have to be either 70 years of age or, just other conditions that you have to require. But yes, you're absolutely right. Clean slate, that's all it does, is just shield information from employers that falls in the category of situations that are covered by the legislature. But my understanding is Governor Shapiro was going to be doing like a next wave of that, and I'm not sure when that takes effect. And I should also mention, because this blows my mind, that a new version of the sentencing guidelines are going to come out effective the beginning of the year if the legislature adopts them, which is going to allow for lapsing of a lot of prior convictions. So in English, what that means is every time you're convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony, you could gain point score. And 5 is the highest point score you could have. If with this change in the sentencing guidelines, point scores may not be as high, because if you have a substantial period of time in between the times you were in court, that charge would go away and therefore wouldn't be eligible to be considered in your point score. So there's giving a lot more flexibility to alternatives, but that lapsing provision, I think, is probably going to be the most significant, because we have people coming in the system that are carrying convictions since the 80s.
Do they still have the refill category?
No, they're going to change those.
Okay.
Yeah, so where it used to be the seriousness of a crime went from 1 to 14, now it's going to go from 1 to 30. So they're really breaking things up. So, yeah.
Those point scores, so when they carry them, they're basically getting a longer sentence due to the fact that 25 years ago they had a sentence which they might have completed, they might have even maxed out on it. So it's kind of like double booking people for,
After school falls or life.
yeah,
Right.
follows you for life. So,
Correct.
yeah, so they're going to change that.
And when I first started here, that was a huge thing that Judge Raup used to do. He would say, you've been convicted of this burglary and now you're going to have a prior record score of 2. So that every time you come into court now, instead of probation to whatever, you're going to be looking at a long period of county time or even state prison, depending upon the type of charge you've committed. So they're open and they're recognizing the importance of people earning the right to have those types of crimes lapse.
What was the last time the sentencing guidelines were updated?
Oh, they've been modified. I forget how long it's been. This will be the 8th edition, and I think I started here in 1986, and I think that was maybe the first or the second edition of the
Yeah,
guidelines.
yeah.
So it doesn't happen very frequently.
No, initially they did, they updated them a lot.
Ugh. Well, because a portion of them were declared unconstitutional, and so it was a nightmare, but these, and again, the legislature hasn't adopted them, but at least the judges have all been updated on the changes in the sentencing guidelines and
You
the
wanna sit-
importance of risk needs.
You wanna sit through a training, it's like watching paint dry, sit through that training.
Yes. It's just mind-boggling.
It
And
is.
thanks to the adult probation office, they have one staff person there, Erin Christ, who is awesome. So,
Yeah.
It is
I hope we
nice that
didn't go
there's
too
not-
far afield,
Call it a
but,
criminal, and they change it to justice involved, that's.
You know, Oscar.
okay. Any other questions?
No.
I hope I
No,
answered the
thank you
question
very
you
much,
wanted me
Judge.
to
Thank you.
ask.
Yeah.
Martin, would you like to make any comments? I know you're a man of many words.
No,
Okay.
the judge did a very nice job,
Okay.
as expected.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Judge.
All right, what would we have?
You were getting ready to do old business, I think, or new business.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move down to prison board meetings. Our next one will be on June 9th.
Don't forget public comment. for new business.
Yeah. Yeah. And it will be at the prison. We'll do new business under public comment. Any public comment? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
What is the settlement meeting we have?
Justice involved.
Well, that's the term to try to get people away from. Settlement fund? Oh, is that the opioid? Okay, is that with you guys?
And with West Branch.
And with West Branch, upstate?
I think so. I'm not sure
No,
on
no, I
location, but
think
yeah.
it is.
Yes, I think you're right.
I think you're right. Hi.
I don't know. Yeah.
How are you? Oh, okay. This is Mr. Commissioner Sarah. This is Mr. Sprout.
Yeah. He's been to our,
Yeah,
well, at least a few times.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
every once in a while.
yeah.
Keep an eye on that warden, but we never had many issues up here, and that was always appreciated.
Oh, that's
This is
good.
my county too, so it's easier to come.
You live here.
I do, yeah, outside the member, so that's.
Yeah, of course.
Plus, plus.
Yeah.
He's always good and receptive, any kind of issues.
Well, he's a
Try to work.
He's a receptive guy, that's
He-
what.
Maybe it wasn't answered.
He's
But I
a
know
smart,
everybody would
open-minded
agree.
man.
And I know I said it to one meeting, but really appreciate the information.
Yeah.
See you here.
The
I know it's probably a lot of
transparency.
effort to staff, but it's good, appreciate it.